Hey guys, we're the Spectacular Trio. I'm Noam. Today we got Caleb here, and today we got Ernie. Woo!
Hey, everybody.
So Ernie, I know you've done a lot of projects. Would you want to explain on that and elaborate? So,
Sure, yeah. So I've been working in the animation industry since 1994. Going on, I guess 27 years or something like that. Um, and yeah, I started out when I attended Cal Arts for character animation. Moved out to California from Michigan to go to Cal Arts. And then when I started out in the industry, I started out doing animation, 2D animation, old school on paper with pencils and all that stuff that you can't find anymore. And did that for several years. Then I worked doing several things, and as an assistant director at Sony, as a flash animator, as a character layout artist, several jobs, some storyboarding, and then eventually kind of transitioned to character design, which was a real interest of mine from the beginning. And as the animation jobs, the 2D animation jobs were kind of drying up at that time. Everything was going either 3D or the 2D animation was being done increasingly overseas. So I decided to focus on character design, and which I didn't mind because I really had a passion for it. And so I started to do that. And at my first full-time character design job was at Nickelodeon, starting in 2001, um, on the Fairly Odd Parents. That was my first full-time gig. I had done some freelance character design on shows like the Powerpuff Girls and Dexter's Laboratory, and a couple of feature title sequences and things like that. Um, but then, yeah, Fairly Odd Parents was a real sort of boot camp for me because it was really an intense schedule. If you've seen Butch Hartman's shows, you know they move quickly and a lot of things happen in them, and especially in the Fairly Odd Parents because Timmy has access to magic. Things just poof in and out constantly. So you might have you might have like a football team that you have to that's going to be on screen for 6 frames of animation, but you still design a football team. So there were a lot of designs in that show, and it was very kind of design focused project, and so that was a real good kind of training ground for me to really hone my skills in that particular kind of style. And I worked on a couple of other Butch Hartman projects, a couple of pilots that he did, and I worked on Danny Phantom a bit, and worked on Tough Puppy, and did kind of design the main lineup for that show. Was my first opportunity to do that. And meanwhile, while I was at Nick, and Butch kept selling shows. When he sold Danny Phantom, the art director from Fairly Odd Parents, Bob Boyle, who had hired me to work on Fairly Odd Parents, he went over to art direct Danny Phantom, and so one of the other character designers on Fairly Odd Parents was promoted to art director, and I became a design supervisor, and then eventually art directed several seasons of Fairly Odd Parents, and so I was at Nick for 13 years on those projects, with a few other things in the interim when we would have done, because Fairly Odd Parents was canceled 3 or 4 times and then picked back up again. And so in the meantime, I would go off and work on something else and then come back or freelance on something else. And but then when I left Nick to go to Nick Jr. in 2013, I went to I was art directing. I've been art directing since then pretty steadily. My last couple of years at Nick, I was art directing on Fairly Odd Parents, and then I went off to art direct a show for Nick Jr. called The Fresh Beat Band of Spies, and then I did a show called Puppy Dog Pals for Disney Jr., which was my first full-time CG art direction show, first time doing a CG show in art direction, and which was a really nice, good learning experience for me as well. And that's what I did that for 5.5 years, and then I just recently, well, last January, so almost exactly a year ago, returned to Nick, where I'm art directing on Camp Coral, SpongeBob Under Years. Yeah.
The platform show.
Yeah. So that's a CG project as well. So yeah, it's been, it's kind of been a circuitous journey with lots of kind of twists and turns in it.
Yeah, I knew you did some of the shows, but I was looking you up last night and I just started scrolling through all these shows. I'm like, wow, there's so many.
Yeah.
You've done so many of my childhood shows.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Danny Phantom.
I saw
Then,
you get excited when I said Danny Phantom.
yes, I actually hope they would actually bring him back for a reboot.
Yeah, well, there's been a campaign to do that pretty much ever since the show ended. I remember going to the Kids' Choice Awards a couple of times, and there was, there'd be a table set up outside with people trying to, circulate petitions to bring back Danny Phantom. And I see sometimes I'll see Butch Hartman's posts on social media, and it doesn't matter what he posts about. He'll post about, some new project or just some personal art or a commission or something, and then people will reply, when are you bringing back Danny Phantom? So I know there's definitely a passionate fan base for that show.
And then I love Fairly Odd Parents.
Yeah, that was a biggie. That was a big one. That was a good one for me in terms of street cred with my kids friends and things like that. I'll go do drawing workshops at their school and stuff, and I would mention Fairly Odd Parents, and everybody knew that show. It was a pretty high profile show, and they would get pretty excited about it.
And then don't forget the new girl, Chloe.
Yes. Yeah. Well, Chloe, the last season I did, Fairly Odd Parents, was technically, I think, called season 9. And that's when it looked like the show might be ending again. It did end. And I left to go to Nick Jr., and then they picked it up again. And that's when Chloe was introduced. So the last season I did, it was either the first season with the dog. What's the dog's name? That has been a few
Sparky.
years now. Sparky, yeah. So Sparky came in, and I did 1 or 2 seasons with Sparky, and then it ended. And then it was kind of almost a reboot when Chloe was brought in, but that was after my time at Nick. That was right after I left.
And yes, you done my sister's favorite show,
Which is?
Puppy Dog Pal.
Oh, awesome. Great. That was a great experience. I actually really loved that show.
Is that show still going?
It is still going. There are still new episodes to come out for a while. Yeah, I think it's wrapping up in terms of production, but they still have a bunch of episodes that are being worked on and finished and things like that. So yeah, season 5, which is pretty extraordinary for a Disney Junior, preschool show. Those usually go about 3 seasons. So
Yeah, like they only cut the older channels for Disney Channel like to 3 or 4.
Yeah. So that was a good run and a really sweet show. I thought really fun and with a lot of nice humor in it and kind of a good heart.
Yeah, I've started to notice that a lot of the new shows like nowadays are getting like 1 or 2, 3 seasons. But if you
Yeah.
look back, all these older shows have like 6, 7, 8.
No, like the
Yeah.
Charm one, they have 8.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know
System
SpongeBob is
Natural
still
got
going.
12.
Yeah. SpongeBob's been going for 12 or 13 or more.
Yeah. Well,
And I mean,
SpongeBob
The Simpsons, of course, has been going for like 100 years now.
Yeah.
I remember when I
100.
was at Cal Arts, I had some friends that were hired to work on The Simpsons, and at that time, I think it was season 9. I mean, I don't even know what season it was, but they were like, "Yeah, I hope we get another season."
What, like 20,
And,
20 years later?
Yeah, 27 years later, they're still making it. So it's
That's insane.
yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's not that doesn't happen often, that's for sure.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
That's like a show. Like, do you think like even if it's gonna die, like this is never gonna die?
Yeah.
Like, it will still kick.
Yeah. Probably when the actors retire, that'll be the only thing that'll
Yeah.
stop them from making that show.
Well, not even like I with animation, you could just change out the voice actor in a way.
You can in some cases, and in
Yeah.
fact, on Puppy Dog Pals, in season 4, we had to recast the two lead kids because they were just getting older. They were really kids. They weren't like adults or women, doing kids' voices. They were little kids, and so as their voices changed and stuff, it kind of got hard to sell. When Rolly's voice started to get down here, it was kind of hard to sell him as a little, kid. But they were great, and then the replacements that came in were fantastic. But it's hard to imagine, it's hard to imagine recasting Dan Castellaneta and some of those guys for the Simpsons. It's they're pretty, I think so much of that show is what those actors bring to it. So it's a little
Yeah.
difficult for me to imagine replacing those guys. But you never know, There's a lot of talent out there.
Yeah. So it sounds like obviously you've been doing animation for so long. I want to know like what got you in the animation, and like did you ever think that you'd be doing all these like shows?
Well, it's funny, I was actually a theater major in college in Michigan. I went to the University of Michigan Flint, and I was a theater major. And I was always passionate about acting and animation. Those two things are things that I could really see myself wanting to do. But animation at that time was not really, it was kind of a thing of the past. I mean, there were cartoons being made, but they were kind of thinly veiled commercials for toys. It
Hmm.
was not a good era for, I mean, many people will disagree with me, but in the days of, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe and stuff like that, like that's not the animation that I was excited about wanting to make. Like the stuff that I grew up with I was always drawn to comedy, so it was really mostly the Looney Tunes and Warner Brothers, the old Warner Brothers shorts and stuff that kind of made me want to work in animation. But and the Disney films and the Disney shorts, of course, but none of that was being done. And then when I was in college, my wife and I were both in this theater program, and a couple of things happened. The Little Mermaid came out, which is, I mean, anytime anything would come out, I would get excited. When the Black Cauldron came out, I got excited, because it was a feature, even though it wasn't a great movie. But The Great Mouse Detective came out, The Little Mermaid came out, The Rescuers Down Under. They started to make these feature quality, real quality Disney features again, and and it really revived. I remember seeing a newspaper article that had a picture of Jeffrey Katzenberg and Michael Eisner on it, and it was talking about the resurgence of Disney animation. And I remember looking at that newspaper going, wow, this industry is coming back. That's really exciting. And so meanwhile, while I was at U of M as a theater major, I was taking art classes on the side. They had kind of a young art program there that it was a few years old, and I was taking every class I could take and talking obsessively about animation, to my teachers and stuff. And so one of my professors named Chris Waters brought in a Cal Arts catalog and showed it to me and said, look, if you want to study animation, like this is the place to go. This apparently is the real kind of premier place. And I looked at it and I saw the tuition and I kind of said, oh, that would be nice in a different life, but I didn't have, the resources to do that and stuff. But she really encouraged me to pursue it and to apply. She said, look, you can apply. It doesn't cost much to apply. You can at least take that step and see what happens, and then kind of go one step at a time, and you never know what could happen. And, one thing led to another, and I was able to secure some funds and scholarship and grants and things like that. And I did get accepted. I applied to several animation programs and got accepted, but even the other animation programs would say to me, that accepted me said, if you get into Cal Arts, that's probably the place where you would want to go. Even the other schools, which I thought was cool of them, and so I did. I got accepted, and I moved out here with my wife and our little bunny rabbit in '92, and without really enough money to pay my tuition yet, and just kind of scrapped and scratched and clawed my way and so I went to Cal Arts, which was a great experience for me. Worked with, met, tons of talented people from all over the country, and who were there to do the same thing. We were all kind of, I'm from Michigan, and where I grew up, nobody was talking about animation. Nobody was, I was, we were all kind of like, when we were all misfits, and we all came to Cal Arts. It was like the island of misfit toys, is how I think of it, because we were all these oddballs who were animation nerds, in isolation all over the place. And then we came together and we finally had somebody to talk and buzz about and get excited about, who understood the language that we were speaking and stuff like that. So that was a really electric kind of an environment, and really spurred a lot of creative energy, and it was, it was just very inspiring. So that's how, so I graduated, I got my degree in theater, and then I came out here to study animation at Cal Arts. And that's what I've been doing ever since. I've done a little theater since then, but mostly I've just focused on animation.
I wanted to know about characters. Have you where do you get your inspiration from? Do the show people tell you what they kind of want, or do you just, is that free reign for you?
It varies from show to show. Every show, one thing that's remarkable to me is every show I've worked on has been different. It's been run differently. It's almost like they reinvent the wheel for each show, but every show creator has their own kind of agenda and priorities and thoughts. And sometimes we'll get a script, and they'll ask for any new characters that are main characters for the script. They'll ask for pre-board designs. So the designer will just read the script and start brainstorming visual ideas. And you just start filling up pages with kind of concepts for that character. And then you show them to the show creator or the storyboard director. And, they'll kind of zero in on what they like and stuff like that. Other shows, I mean, I've had some shows where we didn't do any of that. They would just storyboard the thing, and the storyboard artist would kind of rough out an idea for a character, and that would be kind of a basic framework. So you would know, oh, the character's got, tall and skinny, and they've got big hair, so I as long as I stay within the basic framework without changing the proportions radically, the overall scale, I can still play with it, but there is something there that I don't want to make it a little fat character if it's a tall and skinny character in the storyboard, because then the staging won't work. It's got to still work within the staging of the storyboard and stuff. So it really varies. When I went to work on Puppy Dog Pals, we had a little bit of development time where we had to kind of establish a style. And so that was just a matter of brainstorming and going, hey, I think it would be cool. I remember I was working on the character of Bob, who's the owner of the puppies. And one of the owners of the studio came in and he said, he goes, that's really cartoony. He goes, I don't know if Disney's going to go for that. A lot of their shows kind of have a sort of they kind of have an in-house style that a lot of their shows adhere to. He goes, I love it, but be prepared for them to push back on that. And they didn't, or they very little. I think we had to make Bob's hair shorter. He had tall, spiky hair, and we had to pull that down a little bit. But basically, we were able to do what we were set out to do. And so that was, you just have to kind of push things where you want them to go, and then hope that everybody gets excited about it and goes for it. Sometimes they'll pull you back, or sometimes they'll love it, or ask you to push it further. That's. For me, I like design. So pushing things and making them extreme and cartoony, and pushing the proportions and doing things that are different from live action, that's kind of my jam. That's what gets me excited. I don't really want to work on shows that, something like Archer or something like that, which, nothing against the show, but style wise, that's not what I enjoy doing. It's more of kind of realistic, and the proportions are all pretty realistic, where I would rather do something like Puppy Dog Pals where we can push the shapes and make them, I think I was heavily influenced by early cereal box logos. I remember being in the supermarket with my mom when I was a little kid, and I would stand in the cereal aisle and look at, Toucan Sam and Diggum the Frog and all these characters and go, wow, that's how, how do they do that? I just love those designs. And there are these kind of, early Tony the Tiger and stuff like that. And, this kind of mid-century design sensibility that they had. And I'm still attracted to that design sensibility, that kind of 1950s illustration look. And so I'm, it's kind of the stuff that gets me excited. But yeah, every show is different, to answer your question. I mean, depends on the creator, and sometimes they're occasionally, so in a case like a Butch Hartman show, Butch might have some sketches, some doodles, and it really, he'll just really work out some really quick 30-second sketches and go, maybe something like this. But increasingly, as time went on, and I worked for Butch for so many years that, he really trusted me. And sometimes, he might just give me a doodle, or he might just ask me to come up with something. And he was very supportive about the work that I was doing on the show. He liked it. And so, yeah, the more they trust you, the more kind of creative freedom you get to kind of cook things up. And that's when it's really fun.
Okay. That's awesome. So would you say for someone like getting into animation, like someone that wanting to do like what you're doing, what would be like some of the best advice for them?
Yeah, well, this question always comes up, and the answers sound so pat, and you hear them from lots of different people, but the main thing, the main thing to me is to draw, 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 draw. There are many different skills in animation, and there's lots of different ways to go, but a good drawing, skill set is imperative for most of it, or a lot of it. I mean, there are color stylists who just focus on, color. When I got to Cal Arts, I have to say, we all kind of came there in that time in 92. We all thought we were going to be animators. That was kind of the goal. Everybody came there to be an animator, but then you would get exposed to background design or color styling or paint or, storyboarding, and discover that was kind of where your real niche was. So people kind of diversified, but whatever that niche is, just study, study stuff that excites you, look at the stuff that turns you on and try to figure out why you like it. To me, that's a big part of it, and not just in school, but in life. You see things that just make a light bulb go off inside you from a design standpoint, in my case, and I go, oh, that's an awesome design. And then I have to ask myself, why is that an awesome design? What is it that makes that great? Because I need to kind of reverse engineer that and figure that out. Or sometimes I'll see a design that I think is terrible. I'll see a logo for, a truck will go by with a logo for a company, and I'll go, oh God, that's hideous. But then the same process, I think, okay, why is it hideous? What are the pitfalls there? Let me look at that design and figure out why it doesn't work for me, so I can avoid those kind of same traps and make sure, it's always, design is, and drawing in general, people think it's in the hands, but it's really in the mind. It's the decisions that you make, and it's your thinking process. The hand can be trained easily, but the mind, there's a lot of information to ingest and stuff. So to me, the biggest advice is to be a student of whatever, if it's color or if it's design, or if it's, if you want to be a background designer, it's, perspective and architecture and all of those things that you just need to ingest information and be hungry for information, and never be complacent with what because there's always more to learn, and it's only fun if you're growing and if you're continuing to learn and improve. So to me, it's never, you're never done learning. So, studying and drawing, just drawing, filling up as, doing as many drawings as you can. And because there's a very famous and often quoted quote from Chuck Jones where he said, something like, you have, 10,000, I don't remember the number, if it was 10,000 or 100,000 bad drawings in you, and the sooner you get them out, the better it is for everyone involved, so you're going to do a lot of bad drawings, and you just have to understand that's part of the journey. And you get those out, and some days, no matter how long you've been doing this, you still do bad drawings, but you just have to blow through those and, get to the other side. It's so it's just kind of stamina is a big part of it, just being able to get back up again and dust yourself off and try again. And the other thing, several years ago, I went back to Michigan to speak about making a living in the arts, and So I polled a bunch of friends. I went on Facebook and I put out the question to a bunch of friends who work in the animation industry. What are the top 5 bits of advice that you would give to somebody starting that wanted to get into the industry? And one of the recurring things that kept coming back up, I'll put it in a podcast friendly terminology, but was don't be a jerk. Don't be cool to everybody, because you never know who you're going to be working with. You never know who you're going to be working for. And there are honestly really talented people out there that nobody wants to hire because they're difficult, or their personalities clash with other people. They don't work well with others. And so in that case, it doesn't matter how talented you are, almost, if so that's kind of the other part of the equation, I think. Be easy to work with, enjoy what you do, enjoy the people that you work with, and just study and draw.
Good. I like that. Caleb, you have anything you want to ask him?
No.
You sure? You talk about Fandom all the time.
What?
You talk about his shows all the time.
That's because they're good.
I remember one of the first podcasts that we had, or one of the first talks that me and Caleb had. He's like, I really want to get people that worked on Phantom.
Yeah. Well, have you reached out to any other Danny Phantom people?
No.
I thought they would never answer
Oh, you never know. You never know.
because they always have someone the manager talk, and then they take forever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the three main character designers on that show that developed that show, I'm sure you probably know their names: Steven Silver, and Ben Balistreri and Shannon Tyndall. It was originally Steven Silver and Shannon Tyndall on the show developing the look of that show, and then when Shannon left, Ben Balistreri came in. Just three extraordinary talents, really great designers, all three of them. So, and they're all good guys. I mean, you never know, if you reach out, and of course, there's just so many talented people, background designers and painters, and Bob Boyle, who was the art
Voice
director,
actors.
voice actors. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So there's yeah. I mean, you never know till you ask.
Yeah, we're reaching out to more people.
Good.
It's just hard. We're a smaller podcast, so people
Yeah.
usually don't pay attention.
Yeah. Well, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now we can say we've had 2 big show people on our show. So
Yes, we can. Actually, it's 3 Nolan, because don't forget Phineas the Ferb
yeah, that's who I was talking about.
Swampy Marsh.
and
Yeah.
the last drawer.
Adam
Yeah,
Singer.
Yep.
Yeah, he's my next door neighbor.
Yeah, that's how we got in contact with you.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah, it's actually really funny how we got in contact with Adam. So he's the nephew of one of my teachers.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So she was talking to me about him. I was like, oh, he'd be pretty cool to bring on. So she texted him for me.
Yeah, well, he texted me and said, "Hey, I just did this podcast, and I thought would you mind if I gave them your name and stuff?" So I said, "No, not at all. Please do."
Yeah. It's so funny when I tell my friends about how I get people. They just stare at me. They're like, I don't even get my dad to text me back.
Hey, you're not the only one. Literally, my dad don't like answering Messenger.
Oh, is that right?
He thinks that it's just too much for him to do.
Yeah. Well, I can't get my
Because-
son to answer me back, so
Oh,
My dad says, Caleb, I don't answer Messenger, FaceTime, or video chat anymore. If you want me, come in the living room.
well, there is something to be said for that.
yeah.
Hello. But I'm
Old
like,
school.
I'm doing this, I'm doing that.
Yeah.
So it's just convenient.
So how am I supposed to walk in the living room when I got 2 things that I'm doing?
Well, I'm sure you could find a way.
Yeah,
if there's a will.
I would if I had a twin.
If there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah.
So I just want to ask one more thing.
Sure.
I'm pretty sure you know a lot of like a lot of older animators and artists. If you had a time machine and you were able to go back and work with one of them, who would you work with?
Hmm. Yeah, well, that's a tough one because there are so many greats. But I would say the one who influenced me the most, again, like the old Looney Tunes, Warner Brothers. There are so many great old Disney animators that I would love to talk to and study with and learn from. But um, the old Warner Brothers guys, they were like the Marx Brothers of animation to me. They were kind of the chaotic, anarchist kind of comedians. And I would say Chuck Jones is the one who, I did have an occasion to meet him and talk to him once, but if I had a chance to go back and work on his unit, back at Termite Terrace, that would be the ultimate animation experience to me. Those cartoons were brilliantly executed. They were funny. They were released theatrically. They're just like they were full of character, and to see Mel Blanc in action and all that stuff would just be a dream. So I would say, while I really am a fan of several of the directors at Warner Brothers back in the day, Chuck Jones is kind of the hero that um, that's who I would choose.
You
Awesome.
and my dad would get along really well because my dad also loves Looney Tunes.
Yeah. Oh, it's the best.
Same
It's
here.
still the best.
He likes the little the runner.
Speedy Gonzalez?
Yeah, when they say he's about to die.
Sure. I'm not sure I know that one.
And then Bugs Bunny.
Yeah. Well, sure, of course. Yeah. Classic. That's the good stuff. I mean, you watch that stuff, and to me, the acting in those, one of the things that drew me to animation is the acting, the comedic acting. And you watch those Looney Tunes, and they're the perfect example of those characters are animated so well that they have as much personality as the great comedians, their contemporary live action comedians. I'm a big fan of old comedy, from Charlie Chaplin to Danny Kaye and all that stuff, and Abbott and Costello. But you watch some of those old Bugs Bunnies and stuff, and Daffy Duck, and that's those animators were every bit as good as comedic actors as the live action counterparts were. So to me, that's the perfect marriage of kind of animation and comedy. Like the perfect. These days, to me, animation, the actual step of animation, the acting, where the illusion of life happens, is kind of the biggest neglected part of the industry, for television especially. It's farmed out overseas, it's sent off to the lowest bidder, and it's definitely getting better. I think we're in a new kind of a golden age right now, but for years it's been handed off, and especially the 2D stuff is stiff and clunky, and you don't see a lot of great acting in that stuff. It's the voice actors are good, the writers are good, the storyboard artists are great, the designers, but the animation itself is wanting. So in those old cartoons, that was just as important a part of the process as anything else, and they really were golden for that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
My pleasure. It's really nice to meet you guys, and
Nice to meet you too.
thanks for having me, and I hope you have a great holiday season.
You too.
Thanks.
All right,
You can
guys.
check this out on YouTube, Discord, and all our social media platforms.
Everything you want to be part of or listen to is all linked down below. And this is our last podcast for the year. So we just want to give
season 2.
Yeah, for season 2. We just want to give you a huge holiday welcome, and yeah. Talk to you guys later.
Stay spectacular.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.